Bitcoin program is we're not going to have someone with a centralized ledger who's debiting and crediting and managing it so that you know your account is up and down, etc. Instead, we'll just create a software protocol where there is a ledger, there's a record online, but it's decentralized. It's not just one copy that one person manages. It's a set of copies that everyone can manage. And then you said, well, how does this algorithm work? It has what's called a consensus mechanism. You have a mechanism to set, this is what the ledger is. So now we have the ability to be able to say, oh, I'm sending this value to that person, to that particular destination. We just use the software protocol to do it. What do you think crypto is or cryptocurrencies are?
So people have created a way of making money out of nothing.
You've gone right on a lot. You've sort of hit on a lot of things. I mean, you said money out of nothing. I won't say that. What I would say is...
Everybody out there, you've tuned into The Glenn Show. This is Glenn Loury. I teach at Brown University. I'm host of The Glenn Show. We talk here with somebody interesting every week. Every other week, I have a co-host who's John McWhorter. I teach at Brown University and John teaches at Columbia. But this week, I'm flying solo. And I'm talking to Yaya Fanusie, who is adjunct senior fellow at the Center for a New American Security. His research focuses on crypto, blockchain, and central bank digital currencies. And he spent 7 years earlier in his career as both an economist and counterterrorism analyst in the CIA, where he regularly briefed federal law enforcement and U.S. military personnel and White House level policymakers. So this is a heavy brother that we're talking to over here in the crypto world. He has a BA in economics from UC Berkeley and a master's in international affairs from Columbia University, and has taught on introduction to blockchain technology at Morgan State University in Baltimore. So welcome to the Glenn Show, Yaya.
Hey, Glenn, thanks. It's great to be here for, I think, round two or take two.
Yeah, take two. It's been a while, but what have you been up to, man?
Oh, I've been just working quite a few things. I mean, on the research side, I recently released a report, co-authored a report on China's digital currency. So that's something that we can talk about. That's probably
I saw
a highlight.
That was interesting. Go ahead. What else?
So I'm, I've done that. I've been doing, continue to do a lot in the podcast space. But, right now, a lot of my work, as you mentioned, is in digital currencies. And we're in the midst here in the United States of a lot of activity happening around cryptocurrencies, around stablecoins. These are all things, I don't know if your audience is used to them.
Well, let me interrupt for a minute to say, I'm not used to them. And so I think many in my audience will not be used to them because I don't think many people are used to them. I think it's becoming important, but I think it's still a little bit cryptic. Crypto is cryptic to many of us. So, please elaborate on what's going on.
Well, even before I do, maybe I'll start with, because if people aren't really familiar with cryptocurrencies, they've heard the term. I won't go into a big lecture about the technology. I often like to just ask, what do people think a cryptocurrency is? Because a lot of people, they hear it. And then maybe we could start there. So I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I'm happy to answer in my ignorance.
Yeah. What do you think crypto is or cryptocurrencies are?
So people have created a way of making money out of nothing. And it has to do with digital technology and with being able to uniquely identify people's holdings and accounts, and they can trade them. Now, how do they uniquely identify these holdings and accounts? It's some kind of complex algorithmic thing that I don't fully understand, but that identifies transactions in a very, they have signatures, they have electronic footprints, they have something, I don't know, that can't be reproduced, can't be fraudulently or counterfeited or whatever. And these assets, which are created through this process that I don't understand, can be traded, and people can make transactions through the web, through the internet, so that they can move money Money. Okay, so we want to put money in quotes because what is money? It's not just greenbacks. It's not just, I mean, my entire life savings sits in a set of accounts that I have access to because I have the password kind of thing, and I can go online and I can check my accounts and I can move the money. You know, there's authentication and whatnot, but I can move the money here and there. And this is something like that, but again, I don't fully understand. So tell me where I've gone wrong.
Well, you've gone right on a lot. You've sort of hit on a lot of things. I mean, you said money out of nothing. I won't say that. What I would say is cryptocurrencies or digital currencies, they're internet money, money that is native to the internet. Now, a lot of people will say, well, I use money on the internet. I was doing that before Bitcoin. I have a bank account and online payments and all of that. So
Yeah.
that's true. So then the question is, well, why? What's so special about this Bitcoin thing? Why do people, what did it solve? What's the practical or relevant thing about Bitcoin? And I would say it goes to solving a specific internet problem that has been in effect ever since we've all been using the internet, and that's called the double spending problem. Double spending problem. And what that is if you think about when we all first started using email, sending attachments and all of that, the way the internet works, the internet is about data. And I think we'll come back to this issue of data later on in our talk. But the internet has always been about communication and was a revolution in transmitting data and pictures, emails. The way the internet has worked for sending stuff has always been, it just sends a copy. So when you send a picture or an attachment, that file is still in your inbox, and you basically send a copy, the other person opens it. It's just copied the data, and it's able to transmit it through the cyberspace. That's always been how the internet has worked. But that has never worked for value, for money. Because if I have, let's say, some internet money, and I use that same sort of system, that format, if I copy it from my inbox or my wallet and send it to you, and then you have the money, that doesn't work because that's double spending. I sent it to you, but then I still have it, or someone could spend the same money. It just doesn't work. So it was known as a double spending problem. What Bitcoin did, and you're on the mark with a lot of the things that you said. Bitcoin is this it's software. It's just a software protocol. And I'm starting with Bitcoin because that's the first cryptocurrency. And it was a software program created by a pseudonymous guy named Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who he is. But he created a protocol that would allow you to create a ledger where you don't need to solve the double spending problem by the way we always do, which is what we used to do, which is you have an intermediary to manage what is credited and what is debited, right? That's how we did online transactions. The Bank of America, Wells Fargo, whoever, they basically have a centralized control. And when you send, they make sure that they've credited your account and debited the other person's account, or vice versa, maybe, right? So that was how we could do things online. But Bitcoin said, or the Bitcoin program is, we're not going to do that. We're not going to have someone with a centralized ledger who's debiting and crediting and managing it so that your account is up and down, et cetera. Instead, we'll just create a software protocol where there is a ledger, there's a record online, but it's decentralized. It's not just one copy that one person manages. It's a set of copies that everyone can manage. And then you said, well, how does this algorithm work? It basically, it has what's called a consensus mechanism, which is basically, how do you agree what the ledger is after all these transactions? So you use a lot of cryptography, a lot of computer science stuff that's beyond me, and you have a mechanism to set, this is what the ledger is. And every time there are transactions, all of those records, they're all synced up. And when you quote unquote send, you're not really sending. It's just really you're broadcasting, hey, move from my wallet to that wallet. And all of those transactions are just kept in this record. And there's this computer science cryptography that manages it. So now we have the ability to be able to say, oh, I'm sending this value to that person, to that particular destination. And we just use the software protocol to do it. Bitcoin was the first one. Now there are many others. Bitcoin came out in, the white paper in 2008. What's happening now, why I've been busy, is since the new administration came in, since the Trump administration came in, The Biden administration was very risk averse when it came to cryptocurrencies in terms of regulation, in terms of, what is the place of this? How do we manage it? What should the regulations be? Very risk averse, very much many people in the crypto space would say anti cryptocurrency. The Trump administration is 180 degrees different.
Okay, I want to stop you just for a
Yeah.
minute because I have a question about the basics.
Mm.
You have outlined and you have set the stage for a discussion about different political reactions to the advent of Bitcoin and other digital currencies. But I just want to make it clear about how this double spending problem gets solved by this unique technology that has been introduced. No, by the way, I heard Peter Thiel speak at a conference maybe 5 years ago in Florida, and he said this Japanese guy that you're talking about is the greatest man who ever lived for having introduced this method. And I gather that has to do with the ability to move money between parties without an oversight party, like the bank or whatever, who can be regulated and taxed and whatnot, being an intermediary in the transaction between parties, including nefarious parties like terrorists or criminals or whatever. But in any case, how does the double spending problem get managed? I mean, how is the uniqueness of the transaction between parties that can't be then replicated or counterfeited actually achieved?
So it goes into a lot of that computer science cryptography, because the way this Bitcoin is, this software, it's a record of transactions. So you always know what the state is. You can see from the beginning of time the accounts. Let's say, my account, my address A to address B to your address. There's a record. The way that record is managed, this consensus mechanism ensures that the data from day zero is always confirmed. So if someone were to try to create a new copy, so all the there's a ledger, right, and this ledger is can be accessible to anyone on the internet. If anyone were to say, oh, you know what, my wallet has more money than it really should, it wouldn't work, because the way this ledger is maintained, if there's any change in the data, it wouldn't compute. It wouldn't it would change everything. Your record would look different than everyone else's. So there's a cryptography. There's basically a hash that's created where if you tried to change one data point, it would not fit with the ledger. And maybe that's a little esoteric, but the idea is it solves the problem, because now when you know that I have an amount in my wallet, anyone can see what it is. And when I send it to someone else, it can't be counterfeited. The record is what people say immutable. You can't change it. So because now we're using this system, this sort of software system, you can't copy a Bitcoin. Every amount is sort of uniquely and clearly it's clearly defined within the ledger. So you can't counterfeit it. So
now your wallet is just an address somewhere in cyberspace. It's not your name, Yaya Fanusie, that I can come after you for you not having paid your taxes.
Exactly. At least not in the sort of the native, not in the basic architecture of this protocol, of these protocols, right? They're not made with names. They were just created as an address. So if someone gives you an address, it gives you access to an address, then you have it because you've got the private key. It's yours. And no one, and only you would can transact from it, can send. Now, this, I may be jumping ahead, but I'll just give you a preview. The way I got into this was I was working, doing my think tank work back in 2016, and I stumbled upon a terrorist financing group that was raising Bitcoin. And I knew nothing about, I knew a little bit, but very, very little about Bitcoin. And because of these features, the fact that Bitcoin is basically, it's a record, a software record, we were able to actually analyze this fundraising campaign that was raising Bitcoin on Twitter and on Telegram. So you could actually
When you say raising Bitcoin, you mean persuading people to voluntarily transfer from their wallets to someone else's wallet.
Yes.
These financial assets that could then be used for whatever the purpose of terrorism or whatever purposes that might be at hand.
Yeah, they had a campaign. Now, the spoiler alert is they didn't raise a lot of money. They only had a couple of transactions. And the reason why is because what comes with Bitcoin and most cryptocurrencies is it's a public ledger. So, like you said, it doesn't say, John Brown or John Smith on the, that's attached to the wallet. It just says wallet number, blah, 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 the address number. So you can look at it. You don't know who's behind it. But what do you have now, which you didn't have back when I was a counterterrorism analyst, in the 2000s, where if you were looking at bank terrorist financing, you would have to go to the bank and get the records and have a subpoena or have a government mandate. But with this, I wasn't in government when this happened. I just went online, put in the address, and I could see, oh wow, on June whatever, someone sent $250 to this account, or $250 worth of Bitcoin. They're not sending dollars. So you can do a lot of analysis. You can maybe even track the people down because they're leaving clues because there's a record now.
Okay. Now, there have been different reactions to the advent of this technology from the different corners of our political world. You want to describe that and maybe explain why the enthusiasm on the Trump side and the caution and sort of opposition on the Biden side?
Well, yes. So let's going back to the Biden administration. I mean, there were a lot of developments over the past, let's say, decade. I mean, crypto was, when I started looking at it, very fringe, very niche, 2015, 2016. And then, by the 2017s, you had this rise in Bitcoin. A lot of people learned about crypto back then because of the price rise. So digital assets, crypto sort of became over the past, 8 years, something to be reckoned with, right? A lot of young people are using crypto. More people are talking about it, investing in it.
Using it how?
Mostly for speculation, to be very honest, using it. So I use the term use loosely, because even though the Bitcoin white paper by that person, by the way, we don't know if he was Japanese. I mean, he used that pseudonym. He may not have been a Japanese. Yeah, he may not have been a he. It may, we actually, no one knows who that person is. It's pseudonymous. But
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
which makes Bitcoin very unique because since then, other cryptocurrencies have been created, but we all know for the most part who's created them. They all have this, there's a person or a group of people, but Bitcoin has this sort of mysterious quality because that person seemed to have disappeared. Um, but in terms of using, so most people, yeah, they're speculating, investing in it. Some people look at Bitcoin as sort of digital gold. I can invest in gold and just hold it. Why don't I invest in Bitcoin? And the price has gone up, as most people know, over the years. But still, the crypto industry grew even off of just exchanges. Businesses that allow people to trade different cryptocurrencies. It started with Bitcoin, but now there are thousands. Anyone can create one, and that sort of gets to what we're talking about, what's happening now with the new administration, maybe. So, long story short, the Biden administration. Well, no, let me go back to the first Trump administration. I remember because this happened when I was working on these policies, and I remember Trump once tweeted in his first administration about Bitcoin, and he hated it. He said something about, oh, Bitcoin is terrible, I don't trust it, or something like that. So that was the first Trump administration. The Biden administration comes in, and it's pretty clear that cryptocurrencies need a little bit more attention policy wise. So Biden created an executive order, an EO, which basically set out for the government how to deal with digital assets. They didn't use the term crypto, they used digital assets. And it's basically instructing the whole executive branch to do studies to make sure that the risks of crypto, illicit finance, maybe sanctions evasion, instability, maybe if too many people or banks would try to use it, what does that mean? It set out this very, what are the risks and how do we protect ourselves from the risk of crypto? So that was the stance. And I would say that you're an economist. I would actually say my observation of the Biden administration was you had this rift where I think it was almost between the economist and the technologist. And the economists, generally speaking, within the Biden administration seemed to be more skeptical about this cryptocurrency stuff and this blockchain technology stuff, which is the underlying technology of this ledger distributed. And technologists seem to be, because Crypto is a software thing. They seem to be more open to it. But it seemed under the Biden administration, I would say, the skeptical economists sort of had the policy sway. So you started to see all the policy, directives were very much, let's just manage the risk. Let's make sure this stuff, is dealt with and doesn't hurt people. Which, okay, I get it. But a lot of people would say that kept the U.S. from maybe using some of this innovation. It kept the U.S. from even regulating it more than it had, while Europe was starting to regulate cryptocurrencies. So in the crypto industry, I think there was just a lot of unhappiness with how the Biden administration stands. Well, lo and behold, what happens in 2024? The Trump campaign is open to crypto. And this happened, I think you saw crypto. Unfortunately, I think this happened in the Biden administration. I'm not blaming them, but I'm just saying what happened. Crypto became a partisan issue. When I first was looking at crypto and illicit finance, national security, Democrats and Republicans, everybody was on the same page. Hey, we don't want terrorists to be using Bitcoin to make money. We don't want North Korea to be, stealing crypto, which it has been doing. Everybody's against it. What happened in the Biden administration is, I think on the Democrat side, there was a lot more of a focus on these risks, and it just became more partisan. On the Republican side, being more pro crypto, Democrat leaders, maybe not the everyday person, but on the Hill, really sort of being somewhat anti crypto or very skeptical, and that has changed now that we have a different administration.
Okay, different administrations, different policies. Some of them consumer protectionist oriented. Others are embracing the new frontier. How does North Korea steal? I mean, if everything is some anonymous, software based, algorithmic thing, how does have to get inside people's accounts? They somehow trick people into revealing their password information. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, a little bit of all of the above. So the North Korean regime has a very robust, sophisticated cyber operation. Different groups by different names, but basically we know that North Korea sort of manages or makes use of these hackers. And what these hackers have done over the past, 5, 6, 7 years has been they don't create their own crypto. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of that. What they do is they go to often websites that are exchanges where a person like you and me might go to purchase crypto, and then they just hack into them. So they're not counterfeiting. They're stealing the crypto that's held. They're accessing the wallets of these sites through phishing operations. A lot of it is that. There's a whole there's this whole method of these techniques and tricks going on LinkedIn to try to sometimes even become an insider threat, get hired by one of these companies, get access to it. So they use a lot of cyber hacking techniques, and this is not little money. We're talking about, according to estimates from the United Nations, even and estimates from the U.S. government and elsewhere, in the billions over the past several years. 1 year, 500 million, just from hacking crypto. Now, can they use all of that immediately? The answer is no. When North Korea steals or hacks into these exchanges, what it does is it tries to get rid of some of it. But remember what I said, that there's a record. So when there's a hacking and it accesses a wallet, then it takes that crypto and sends it to a wallet that it controls. You can see that. So law enforcement can look and they can see, oh, I see where that wallet is. So now if that wallet tries to transact and go to another exchange and cash out into regular currency or fiat currency, then you have the ability to then go to that exchange and say, well, wait, look at that. Look at the trail here. That actually comes from this hacking by North Korea. Don't let that customer cash out. That's a North Korean operative. So they can't get everything, but they've been able to steal a lot through crypto, unfortunately.
What does cashing out mean? There's an exchange somewhere where if I want to buy crypto, I put real money. I put a transfer from my Bank of America account on the line, and somebody on the other side of it surrenders to me or conveys to me the my wallet to my crypto wallet, the unique code associated with their wallet, and
Yeah.
is that what it means to cash out?
Yeah, well, it's just simple. It's simple. How do you exchange the cryptocurrency you hold for cold hard cash or fiat currency, and that could be a bank account. We're talking U.S. So let's just say USD, U.S. dollar, and the way that is facilitated is always through an exchange business. So back in the early days of Bitcoin, remember these folks were just computer science technologists, messing around. They would have their crypto. Now, how would they get real money? They're just playing around on this with this internet money.
Yeah.
So in the early days, people said, okay, hey, let's just create a site. So, hey, you send me some Bitcoin, and then offline, I'll make sure I send you I'll send you a wire transfer, or I'll send you, or cash. Like I'll meet you, you send me, give me your private, or not give me, you send me to my wallet, and then I'll just actually give you cash because we're meeting in person. That's a form of cashing out. I've just gotten cash for my crypto. Those were the early days. Now, a decade later, it's a business, it's an industry, and there are reputable, even IPO, public companies, U.S. companies that provide that service. It's a very legitimate business with all the anti-money laundering requirements and all of that. But some of those exchanges that maybe don't follow the rules for anti-money laundering, and that's really my focus with all of this crypto stuff, is the illicit finance side. So if North Korea has a bunch of crypto, it's not going to go to the U.S. exchange, which is very thorough, follows all the terrorist financing laws and the know your customer laws. They're not going to go there to try to cash out because they're going to check their ID, are they on the sanctioned list, et cetera. So what they'll do is crypto is global. They'll go to some exchange outside the United States. It could be, I don't want to name countries, but somewhere in Southeast Asia or the Middle East, or wherever, where maybe they don't have the same controls, and they're not asking for their ID, or they're not really checking fake IDs very well, and they may be able to cash out, or they just find someone who's unscrupulous and who says, "Oh yeah, no questions asked. You send me crypto to my wallet, and I'll give you some euros, or I'll give you some pesos, or I'll give you some US dollars, and I'll just do that sort of on the black market."
But as you say, the record is still there to be discovered later on by anybody who might look into it. So the payer who pays out real money, cash to the person who holds the crypto, could well later find out that their value is not going to be accepted someplace else.
Exactly.
Am I right in that?
That does happen, because now someone can say, "Oh, let's say the good cryptocurrency exchange here in the United States. Now they get a new customer, and the customer says, "Oh, I already have, I was elsewhere at a different company. I already have a wallet, and I'm going to send my wallet to this exchange, which I just got." That company is going to say, "Well, where does that crypto come from?" And they'll look at the ledger and they'll say, "Wait, you trace that 2, 3 steps. That came from that North Korean hack, or that came from Iranian, some Iranian money laundering." No, we're not going to accept that. So it's sort of like a cat and dog, cat and dog. Is that the the term? It's a case of law enforcement trying to stay a step ahead of the criminals to try to catch them, and it's global. That's the challenge.
We've been talking about exchanging digital value between parties. Where does the original creation of the digital value come in?
The original creation comes in from, well, depending on that cryptocurrency, they always have a process. And when we talked about Bitcoin, there's this thing people have probably heard of called mining.
Yeah.
And I don't. Now we get into technical stuff. What I'll just say is, what Bitcoin does is the process they have for verifying the transactions, or this consensus mechanism, right? Having a consensus on what is the state of the transactions and the record of the ledger of transactions over time. By being someone who participates in that process, which anyone can do, anyone that has certain software and hardware can be a miner, can be someone who validates transactions. And by participating in that, by being a validator, you'll get rewarded. The consensus mechanism will reward you with your own crypto. So that's the origin of these cryptocurrencies. They usually have something like that. for most blockchains. But then you also have, I should say, if anyone has ever heard of Ethereum, that's one of the other biggest cryptocurrency blockchains. There are now, but by 2016, 2017, it became easy to just create a new cryptocurrency off of basically the infrastructure of Ethereum. And again, I don't want to get too technical, but now to create a cryptocurrency, you could actually have an Ethereum-based cryptocurrency or some other blockchain-based where it's relatively easy for you through a smart contract. And I want to use that term smart contract to lead to us to talk about China. Because what crypto also brought was this idea in computer science of smart contracts, which didn't start with crypto. But what blockchain technology does is allows these programmers to write contracts within the blockchain, within the software. So now you can transact that, you can program that, certain conditions. So I'm going to write a contract and I'm going to create this amount of cryptocurrencies that have this characteristic. Or I'm going to create a smart contract that says when you transact, it goes into escrow. When you send money, it goes into an escrow account until certain conditions are met. And then the blockchain will show, you can look at the contracts that will say, okay, now you can send that money. So smart contracts are something that has developed to really create programmable money. And this is in its infancy.
Programmable money.
Exactly. Programmable money. This is, it's a term, it's not an official term, but it's the idea of, so here's an example of something that you can't do, you really can't do today through computer science, through regular currency. So let's say a service job. Let's say I'm a plumber, I'm a HVAC person, and I do work in your home and I fix something. Is there a way so that you send the money and the money does not come to my account until it's verified that the job was actually done to satisfaction? Is there an easy way to do that? Could you just send a payment and then I'm only going to get it once my job is done correctly? If there's no financial sort of programming to do that through just our regular, online transactions, but in the crypto space, because all of this is just based on software, you could write a contract which says, this money or this crypto was only released if this condition has been met. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be some sort of outside verification, but what I'm saying is now you could create a whole bunch of different models for payments. You can also do something which is interesting called microtransactions. So here's an example, the Glenn Show. Obviously people are subscribing, paying for the Glenn Show.
God bless them.
Yeah. Are they a subscriber? I'm a subscriber, but what if for your Substacks, what if you had a way for, what if somebody wanted to pay for every, what if you wanted people to pay, I don't know, less than a penny, or if you wanted them to easily pay fractions for everything they read, depending on how much they read, how can you get a fraction of a penny? How can you get, crypto allows you to do that because you can program to 0.000 decimal points. So now you can maybe create different models of payments and services that you can't do in our regular banking infrastructure or architecture.
Okay. So Samuel Bankman-Fried, is he ancient history now? He's sitting away in the jail cell somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. And he was...
that was fraud, right? That was misrepresenting the financial underpinnings of his business. It wasn't specifically tied into crypto. It was he was playing funny with the money on his various business commitments. It was
cryptocurrency was part of it because that was his business, right? He was howing people, he had a crypto service, but it was regular fraud that you would see and could see in other types of, financial sectors. The thing about that is that here's where the regulation comes in and what happened under the Biden administration, what's happening now, he was offshore. He wasn't incorporated in the United States. They did have like a US-based FTX. They had a US base, but most of his activity was offshore. Why? Because You couldn't do any of that here. So he had to go offshore because the regulations really weren't set to do all the stuff, all that fancy financial stuff he wanted to do. There were no real crypto laws to give you oversight and regulation over that. So he just, I forget where he was. Was it the Bahamas or one of the island
It's
nations?
in the Caribbean, yeah.
Yeah, it was in the Caribbean where he was headquartered. And hey, I love the Caribbean, but I'm just saying that there have been issues in some of these jurisdictions which don't have the same amount of controls and oversight, unfortunately. But that was fraud, and that was also, I mean, to give the Biden administration credit, that happened that was a lot of the Democratic response was to that, was that this was such a huge fraud. It was a big headline. So no, people did not want to have to do with crypto per se because of that blemish.
David Sachs, I understand he's Trump's informal crypto czar. Who is he? What does he do?
See, he in his role, I mean, the Trump administration came in with their own executive order. Remember, the Biden one had one, which was, let's look at the risks, let's make sure that people aren't being harmed, et cetera. President Trump came with an executive order which said, let's focus on digital financial innovation. Let's be the leader of it. Let's make crypto the capital. Let's make America the crypto capital. And what he did was he created a position of someone to be the quote unquote czar for AI and for crypto. So that's a White House level appointed position. So we're in the midst right now of seeing, well, what is the U.S. going to do in terms of regulating crypto more? We talked about these cryptocurrencies that are their prices based on supply and demand. But there are also stable coins, which are cryptocurrencies that are backed by fiat currency or some other real world asset. It could be a U.S. dollar stable coin. There's legislation right now being worked on to really sort of provide an oversight over that, whereas you wouldn't get that in the previous administration.
Stablecoin is a digital asset that also has behind it conventional financial assets.
Exactly.
Right now?
Because because Bitcoin, it's gone up, but it's volatile, or it can be volatile. Most cryptocurrencies, right? They don't have a stable value to the U.S. dollar. So what people started to create was this model where, okay, I have a cryptocurrency, but it's going to be set to $1 US. So you give me $1, through your bank account or whatever, and I will give you this cryptocurrency that is the face value of $1 US. So you could have 100 of these or 1,000. So now you have cryptocurrency that's a stable coin, but it has a US dollar. Now, I know a lot of people listening to this might say, well, why would I do that? I already have US dollars in my bank account. I don't need a crypto. So there are maybe two thoughts to that. There's one, stable coins are very popular overseas. Because you can use them to do transactions where if you would try to do the banking, a bank wire, it would be slower, cost more. By just getting a USD now, if I have the Naira, if I'm Nigerian and the Naira is just going down, devaluation, if I purchase USD, then I'm solidifying my value. I'm stabilizing the value of my what was Naira, so that it keeps the value and doesn't go down. So you have that, and then people doing cross-border international transactions, not going through the banking system. And then this will kind of maybe lead us to China. But
let's get to China.
Okay, but so I'll just say, and then there's the idea of programmability. So you have US dollars in your regular bank account. With a stable coin, now maybe you can participate in some of these programmable financial activities, decentralized financial services. That's kind of the appeal for a lot of people in the crypto space. Do you want to talk about China?
Well, what about meme coins?
Oh, boy. Meme coins are something that developed in our internet age where, like I said, now people can create. So now people can create memes and put a crypto behind it to sort of go with the hype, to bring attention to something, to do it for fun, to make money. And obviously you've seen that on all levels.
Yeah, this is creating a space where people can speculate about what the future value of the thing is going to be, and their behavior in that context might be influenced by the meme that's identified with the coin, not to mention any particular person who might be trying to sell meme coins, but just to say, well, I mean, what's added by the meme to the basic structure?
I don't know. I mean, it's in the eye of the beholder. I mean, I think you described what, one of the values, and these have been around for a while. I mean, of course, they've gotten more attention, the past several months. But, in a lot of spaces, people just see these as things for fun. And so you just have to know, buyer beware, sometimes, but, just with everything. I mean, this industry is very dynamic. People are creating things. So here's what I would say as someone who follows the policy side of this and the regulatory side. The challenge is that the computer science that creates crypto has often been ahead of the regulatory oversight in some facets. I mean, the illicit finance side of it has actually been pretty good for the most part. But all these things, creating a new coin and doing these things, the question comes, well, how does the is it the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC? Is it the SEC? What are the rules? And there have not really been clear rules on how to manage these different new products and services, like a meme coin. So one argument would be that, well, maybe that's why we need this stuff regulated very well. That's why we need regulation. So all these things people have concerns about, there's a role for, okay, what disclosure should there be? Even with a meme coin, like what are the rules for doing meme coins? So the important thing is, well, how do you regulate this? Then you can put in, well, I don't think, when it comes to this sort of behavior, you should have this. But that's why regulation is needed.
Central bank digital currencies, China.
Oh, so this has taken up in my think tank work a lot of focus. So, central bank digital currencies and China. China, about, I don't know, was it 6-7 years ago? And many central banks, they started looking at Bitcoin because when Bitcoin was on the scene by 2010, like the early 2012, 2013, 2014, central banks, first of all, they ignored this cryptocurrency stuff. They ignored Bitcoin. But then they started to look at it and they started to say, okay, so I see that you could use this computer science software to maybe have more efficient payments. Oh, and you can have a record that now everyone can see, or at least the parties that are into the record that have access can now agree upon the, the accounts in a way that's not so siloed, like our current banking system. Different banks have different silos of information, and how do you reconcile? It's a whole huge process. That's why you have so many fees. So central banks started looking at crypto, not because they wanted to reproduce it exactly, but they wanted to maybe borrow from it to create their own central bank digital currency. And this has been all over the world.
The central bank digital currency is rooted in the same computer science-like technology that the crypto is?
It varies. So not exactly, because the cryptocurrency technology is what we call permissionless, meaning it's just software that anyone can access and it's uploaded and anyone can get access to it or send from it. That's not what central banks are good. They don't want that, right? They need to control the money supply. They want monetary policy in their hands. So what there are different ideas. These are mostly in the research and pilot stage. China is actually kind of pretty much ahead of a lot of countries. But what they often do is they'll say, well, let's maybe use a permissioned blockchain. So we'll use this ledger, but it's not going to be one that anyone can access. It'll just be one that the government can access. Or maybe it's not a distributed ledger. Maybe it's a centralized ledger. There are different ways of doing it. And I should give a shout out to the Atlantic Council. Actually has a central bank digital currency tracker. So you can see like all these different central bank digital currencies that are out there, but they have different architectures.
I gather from skimming over your report that there's a lot of concern about the Chinese central bank digital currency, and that has a political dimension to it. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we call the report is the programmable state, the ECNY and China's quest for smarter surveillance. And the title is what it is. First of all, the ECNY is the electric Chinese yuan. That is the name of their digital currency project or pilot. And it is the People's Bank of China, their central bank, has for several years. They've been researching how they could create their own currency. And what our report does is since it's been out for a while, a very small footprint. I mean, China's fintech and their payment space is huge, and this pilot is very small, and not a lot of people are using it. But there's enough reporting where we've been able to look at all these different pilots that are around the country to assess, well, what are they doing? What are they creating? And one of the features in China's digital currency is they're trying programmable money. They're trying programmability. They're giving sort of these pilots where you can do what I described, like an escrow. So you do the payment in their digital currency, and before it goes to the merchant or the service provider, it goes to escrow, and that's in the wallet. It's programmed in the money itself. So you can program it so that then when the services are delivered, then they get the money. It goes out of escrow. So they're doing this. It's very rudimentary. I mean, it's not widespread. But as we looked at it, we said, okay, there are a few different ways to look at this. This is, okay, you can see this innovation. You can see a lot of the, maybe some cost efficiencies and savings, creating wallets for your car, wallets for your license plate, because now you have this programmability with the wallets that you could do all this stuff. But there's the larger context of what's happening in China around data and surveillance. One of the things that we found is that if you look at not just this digital currency, but if you look at what the People's Republic of China is doing around data, the Chinese Communist Party has said that it sees data as a factor of production. So its whole sort of industrial and informational economy is really getting focused on how to aggregate, collect, and use data for the state, for economic development, for whatever state purposes. What does that mean? That means that now they're building a society where data is key, and they're going to make sure they get data. So the digital currency project, one of the concerns is that, if you have programmability in your money, then does that mean you could turn it off? Does that mean if someone has a wallet and they do something, they post something that you think they shouldn't, could you turn off their wallets in a quick in a way that's more quicker? There was one, I'll share this real quick anecdote that happened in China a few years ago. H&M Clothes, or H&M Clothing, which is big, it's a European company. A lot of you know of it. They had on their blog something about the Xinjiang region and the sweatshops with the Uyghurs on their website. So China launched a campaign basically removing the digital footprint of that company. If you went in Beijing, if you went onto the Google to find the store that was right there, it would be nothing would show up. No destination. If you tried to go to the Uber, the Chinese version of Uber, it was removed. And that was in retaliation. That was sort of digital retaliation. And my hypothesis is that could be easier if you had this China's digital currency model where the government really has control over payments. That's a concern for surveillance. And also that model could be exported to other countries because every country is looking to innovate.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm beginning to get a little bit up to speed here. Would you advise against the private citizen and ordinary person who doesn't, like myself, doesn't have expertise investing in crypto?
Oh, I would not. No, I would not.
How would you go about doing that?
So it's really very, very simple. So if someone wants to access crypto, they can go to a number of websites that are legitimate exchanges, cryptocurrency exchanges. There are a bunch out there that are very reputable. Like I said, there are companies that are public companies on the New York Stock Exchange that provide crypto. So you would really just go there, and for most of these websites, they make it just like opening up any other account, a bank account or something similar. So you could just go to those, and then you would just link it to your bank account and say how much crypto you want. And a lot of people do that, buy Bitcoin. I'll give you a funny story. When I started to learn about crypto in 2016, trying to learn more about it, I gave my son, who was, I think he was in high school at the time, and my niece, his cousin, an assignment. I said, do this research and I will pay you all in Bitcoin. And I did that because I wanted to answer your question. I wanted to tell myself, well, how would I get Bitcoin? So I said, if you guys do this, I'll give each of you $50 worth of Bitcoin. And they both did the assignment. And I was forced to open up an account, and I sent them both $50 of Bitcoin. So this is 2016. They both had Bitcoin. And this was when Bitcoin was, I think it was less than 500. I think it was $300 for one Bitcoin. And I just sent them and I just grabbed $100 worth, and they were in high school. And they kept it. I know my son kept it for quite a few years, but the price went up so much. I think it was hard to hold on to it. So I don't think he has that Bitcoin
Cashed
anymore.
out.
He cashed out. Yeah.
Yaya Fanusie, expert on digital currencies and the cyber revolution that we're living through right now. And I hope we can talk again soon. Really good to have you on the Glenn Show.
As always, great to be here. Thank you, and kudos for all your great work. I'm looking forward to seeing you continue to thrive.
I appreciate that. Thank you.